Hello, everyone. I hope you're thirsty because it's time for another episode of What's the Tea? This is a podcast that spills the piping hot tea about Nevada politics, the progressive world, leftists, liberals, whatever you want to call us. We are talking about the latest buzz in Nevada government and and we're talking to the coolest locals in town. Today is very special because this episode is very special because it's Aries season. Plan is an Aries organization. We filed with the Secretary of State on April 8th. That makes us an Aries, and which is obvious because we love to fight. And so I'm really looking forward to our conversation today because we have three very special guests that are very, very special to me and probably hundreds or thousands of progressives across Nevada. So I want to bring on to the stage with me B. Fulkerson, the founder of Plan, Jan Gilbert, co-founder of Plan, and Kenya. I want to say your right last name, Kenya, but one of our board presidents of Plan. And actually, I don't know if Kenya remembers this, but it was you and Yendra who invited me to the Economic Justice Committee of Plan. And that's when I first volunteered for Plan and started getting involved. And so I really credit you for getting me engaged and becoming a planista. And here I am as a director.
Well, these days I go by my maiden name, Kenya Johnson, but everyone in Nevada knows me as Kenya Pierce.
Kenya. Okay. So I think we could easily end up talking for like 5 hours because there's so much history with Plan. You all were revolutionaries, I would say. I think a lot of things that people want to learn about, like anti-racism, DEI, CRT, Plan was doing when I first started volunteering, and that's when I first learned these concepts. And so we have a lot of history and we have a lot of things to talk about. And so I would love starting with Jan. If you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk about what your role was with Plan and kind of a little bit about yourself, and then pass the mic around the horn, and then we can move on to the next question.
Okay. I'm Jan Gilbert, co-founder of Plan. I had been a lobbyist at the legislature for the League of Women Voters when I realized we weren't doing very well. We were all in our little silos, the environmental groups, the work that I did on good government, all that. And when I knew B, but I hadn't worked with him on any of the issues. And so getting together with him, with they, it really made
times have changed.
I'll tell you. So anyways, I was the lobbyist for Plan, and we took a long time to build the organization, getting people to sign on and be part of our group. And that first year was a big part of our work. And we went all over the state and tried to explain to people we're much more powerful if we work together. Coalitions are the way to go. And B knew a lot more about what was going on across the whole country. And there were other groups in Connecticut and, Montana who were doing this. And so that was kind of the impetus of Plan. And each year it's just getting better and better. So.
Thank you. Can we pass it to Kenya?
Sure. So let's see, man. So I had relocated to Nevada from the Midwest. Shout out to St. Louis. And I had been in Vegas for maybe 3 years. And I was like, I just wanted to be connected to something that I don't know what language I was using before, because we weren't saying like social justice per se. It was, I think I might have said like community action or community, I don't know. So the only organization that I trusted and knew as a social worker was the United Way. So I reached out to United Way, Las Vegas. They connected me to Merlinda Gallardos. And she was like, hey, let's talk. And so I started explaining to her, like describing the type of work I wanted to do. And she was like, I know just the organization for you. And so she was like, there's this organization called Plan. And so she introduced me to Paul, and then one thing led to another. And I found myself in Reno, Nevada. Never been to Reno, Nevada. Like I was just, and was attending a meeting. And I want to say the topic of the meeting was around racial justice organizing work. And Plan had just formulated People of Color Caucus. And I remember I was pregnant with my daughter, who is now 20 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Sat next to B, and he did not, he with no eyebrows. And I'm like, who is this white man? But that's when I met the group, the Plan group, the Reno group. And I'll tell you, being in a new state, a new city, and not knowing anyone, the Reno folks were my first group of friends.
Aw. I love that.
He asked me, would I be interested in joining the People of Color Caucus? And one thing led to another. And I became just an excited and committed active member of the network.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And I can't believe I see you on Facebook and just seeing your kids. They're adults. They're the new Planistas. It's amazing. All right. How about you, B? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to Plan, and what was your role?
So let's see. I mean, I remember the 1993 legislative session. Judy Corbicero had come to me saying, "You're the only openly gay person I know in Reno who might have some connections in the legislature." And I talked to Lori Lippman Brown, senator, who is interested in repealing Nevada's sodomy bill, which basically made it illegal to be gay in Nevada, and actually, and then that session, Jan was also working on low income issues. And there was also a bill to negotiate with the federal government on terms of conditions that Nevada should take the nuclear waste dump. And the nuclear industry spent like millions of dollars that year on ads on TV. And the legislature was poised to do this. And so we all worked together on all three of those things. And afterward, because of the success we had, the first time these different communities came together, we said, let's see if we can make this permanent. And that's, about a year later than Plan was born. We did a lot of one-on-ones in that interim year. Talked to people like Helen Tolan, Ruby Duncan down in Las Vegas, Gary Gray, some of these old people down in Las Vegas, and it was great. Anyway, that's how I came. And then, nobody else. And so, Jan said, Bob, you can be the director. I said, great. You can, we'll pretend that we're co-directors, but I don't mind being the boss. That's totally cool. But we all knew who was in charge, no, I'm kidding.
I love that. I'm going to stay with you, B, but I want Kenya and Jan to also answer this question. I do think sometimes in the progressive space, people assume that everything was always okay because we are progressives. B, do you want to talk a little bit about, you said you were an openly gay man, but do you feel in the progressive space, everyone was open to that? And then when I get to Jan and Kenya, the same thing, or were people comfortable with a woman leader or a Black woman leader in this space?
Well, no, I mean, things were really different then. I mean, there was not one queer member of the legislature then. It was still like 2 years away from David Parks's election in 1996. Emma Sepulveda was the first Latina to run for the legislature in 1994. The electorate was like over 90% white. It was a completely different time and place then.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the men ran the show.
Yeah. And mostly men.
Yeah.
mostly white men. We didn't have nearly the representation of women in the legislature, but we had a few very strong characters. In fact, Barbara Buckley, of course, was a member of Plan, and she decided to run for office. So she had to kind of pull away from being on the board so she could be a little more, but thank goodness for her, because
Yeah.
it allowed us access, lots of access. And yeah, it was a different place. I mean, we have victories over raising the grant level for welfare, $20. We thought that was a huge victory because it was so difficult.
Yeah.
And I would say, I didn't think of myself as different than anyone else there as a lobbyist. There were a few very strong women, thank goodness, who paved the way. And I was able to learn a lot from them as far as being an advocate.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have so many reflections because this really cemented my adulting. Like I was in a new state, like on my own, being grown, being a professional. And so Plan just really helped me launch my voice, and find my power in so many ways. And so my answer to this is a little nuanced because I know I consciously I was a little reluctant in spaces that I wasn't used to being in, right? It was through Plan that I got introduced to labor and unions, and my dad was is a retired iron worker, and I knew he was a member of the union in St. Louis, and but my but my understanding of what that meant was colored by the very racist history of union organizing in the Midwest, right? And so I was coming into these spaces, sometimes being the only Black person, the only Black woman. And so half of me was like shy and a little reluctant to like speak my truth. But the other half was, you know, say the thing. And I think it was interesting because sometimes I think that folks didn't know what to expect from me being at the table, right? And so it just, you learn what, they use the term relational organizing now, right? But relationship building and getting to know people. And I think that the way that I mean, there will always be very important meetings, but it always felt like a community or a family, like where you had this time to kind of check in with folks before the meeting and check in with folks after. And that sort of helped me start to feel like I belonged in those spaces. But it was an interesting it was interesting to now see myself as a progressive, right? Because I just saw myself as a Black woman looking to work on racial justice, right? Not necessarily a progressive. And I think in a lot of progressive spaces, folks want the benefit of the doubt that, hey, we're not racist, we're progressive, right? Because we're working on this and we're working on that. And to insert and be very explicit and say, oh, we need to talk about systemic racism, it sometimes put people were a little shocked, right? A little shock and awe around like, we don't need to talk about that. We're part of the Plan Coalition. Like we got this, right? And I appreciate B and Jan and others who were in leadership at the organization to stay committed to like, yes, we're all here to talk about climate justice, environmental justice, immigration rights, all the things. And also we need to name sometimes the elephant in the room around how we show up in these spaces. So it was a learning experience, Laura. I will say that. And I appreciate, learning more about myself as a Black woman, being in those spaces.
Yeah, definitely. I know one story that B tells is our first dismantling racism training was more like dismantling Plan because even when you're progressive, I think there are some people in the progressive space who do think they're above that. I can't
Right.
possibly be
Right.
racist. I vote Democrat, and that's we know that's not true.
And-
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, we all learned a lot. Our dismantling racism workshops that we did, I don't know how many we did, but we did a lot of them. And I know for everybody, it was fantastic experience because it opened all our eyes to what we didn't understand.
Yeah.
You know, we thought we did.
Right.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just an exercise in identity and it was a big exercise in relationship building and having real authentic conversations. And I'm just really grateful that, like, 25 years later, Kenya is now working with Third Act, the group I work for, training people in these same ways of showing up fully, being aware of our unconscious biases, and working on racial justice.
Mm-hmm.
I want to also, it like factored into policy because we did those racial justice report cards. And remember in 2011, I think that was our first year, the first year that Sandoval was elected. And we gave him a really, really bad grade because he vetoed a bunch of bills. One of them was the school breakfast bill. And so he got dinged on that. And I remember John Ralston tweeted out, or didn't tweet back then, wrote some column or whatever about how stupid Plan was. How could school lunch be a racial issue? Well, it's because kids of color were disproportionately affected. And I'm really proud of Plan for being among the first groups to introduce those concepts to the political dialogue here.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first racial equity report card, we gave a bad grade to now Congressman Horsford.
He wasn't
And
happy.
I will never forget, one of the people in the press came up, said, how he was defending Senator Horsford, saying, how dare you give him a D or whatever we gave him. I said, well, look at what he voted. We're just doing by the voting record.
Yeah.
And he made some deals, and deals went down, and he had to vote a certain way on a bill. And so we scored him low, even though we knew him and think he's fabulous. But I'll never forget, the reporter was the most outraged.
Man, that was such a traumatic experience.
The reporter is bad. Wow. Well, kind of in that context, I'm hoping people are hearing, like, yes, we built this amazing organization, but it wasn't necessarily easy.
Right.
For Jan and B, what are some of the first victories that you remember, and kind of like the climate around that?
Well, I'll start. The victories really became who joined Plan, who made that commitment to Plan. And it was difficult because people had always done their own thing in their own little silo. And we had the Trial Lawyers Association, and they had never worked in coalition with anyone like us. When we asked the AFL-CIO to be part of our coalition, they didn't quite get it. Why? But it started to build, and people understood that we were in their corner too. And when they needed someone to come talk about labor unions and childcare and workers' rights, we were there with them. We tended to say we may disagree sometimes. Yeah. And there are times when there was one labor union who also joined Plan, and he was anti-choice. And we came out with a very strong pro-choice message, and he had to step down. But AFL stuck with us and stayed with us for many, many years. So those were big victories to me, is building the coalition. And, sure, we had some legislation we got passed, but it wasn't nearly as big to me as our group getting wider and pulling in more and more diverse people.
Yeah.
That's funny you would say that, Jan, because, you were in the legislature working your tail off, and in the interim going to all the committee meetings and had a huge impact on major public policy issues that, but for Plan, you can ask the leadership and they'll tell you that, would not have happened. So I'm amazed. I was going to hit on all the policy stuff. And so it's amazing that you hit on the process stuff. I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did. We had great influence, and it was powerful because we were together.
Mm-hmm.
And, getting reproductive or healthcare, for women, mandatory. The workers' rights bills. I mean, when the Sierra Chemical explosion, and it was predominantly people of color who were affected, and working with Republicans, and those days you could occasionally work with some senators.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I remember like very, real tight relationship with Kenny Gwynn on his second term. Very, very close. He ended up hosting the board of trustees for the Ford Foundation for us, which, put us on that, their fast track for years.
Well, and when I ran for office in 2002, I asked Kenny Gwynn, a Republican, to give me a quote for my mailer. And he said, "Oh, yeah, okay, just write it. You write it." I went, "I'll write it?" He said, "Yeah, you write it and I'll put it in, I'll sign it. That's good." I became a friend of his. He was, the days were different. The Republicans were so different. And it's a shame we're not back there, because we did work together on many, many things. Randolph Townsend was good on workers' rights, was good on reproductive rights. I learned a lot. I had one time a lobbyist said to me, "Why do you work so hard?" I said, "Well, what do you think I'm doing here? I'm here to make a difference. I'm not here for fun."
Right.
Not fun. But, they saw me as someone who was busy. I was very busy. Anyways.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think Plan also changed the way that we do business in the legislative building. I think I've told B this, but I know I told Jan when we had a one-on-one in Reno a few weeks ago, there's a certain lobbyist that we all know, former assembly person, who had said at some convening where there was a bunch of people and he's the speaker, had said like, groups like Plan would be more successful if, we weren't outside the building with bullhorns, but recruited more white people to lobby inside the building for us. And I think that Plan has showed year after year, you don't need white people. You need to have a strategy, a vision. You need to have that leadership development and just like break through that attitude of the building of just this good old boy network is the only way a small government state can run.
Yeah. I think another big change is that building has become a cesspool, frankly. And I hate to be one of these boomers in my day, but I'm going to go there, okay? I mean, the lobbyists then versus today, it's like, I don't know. There's just like, I will say even our movement lobbyists it just seems like everybody, I don't know, people are afraid to take risks, it seems to me, and everybody's kind of looking what their next move is going to be, whether that's a politician that's not willing to make a hard vote or introduce a hard bill because they might not get elected next time, or that's a lobbyist who is just going to blow smoke up everybody's, and not tell the truth about things. I don't know. It's just, it's a much different place.
I agree. I know we had a lobbyist tell some of our folks, you're not going to be successful unless you're inside the building 120 days every day. And like, I think we've been pretty successful organizing in the community. And I think that is what happens. But I agree with the cesspool attitude. Like this, it's not Washington, D.C., it's Carson City. And organizing still counts. And Kenya, I know you didn't start in 94 or in the 90s, but I would love to hear from you. What are some victories you remember with Plan?
Yeah, so many. So first, I just have to say, Jan, like I don't know. If we could take how you were and put it in a can and sell it, like you made lobby, like it was an art when you did it, right? And what, and to kind of follow up with what you all were just speaking to, right? People knew what to expect from Plan, period. And so, yeah, there was disagreement, there would be contention, there would be resolution, but people knew what to expect, right? And so I know if I'm a legislator and I'm doing the most, Plan is going to probably have something to say about this, right? And so get ready for this conversation, right? And I just remember those those calls where you would phone in and give us updates. Like
Yes.
you were like the John Madden of, you know what I mean? Because you like play by play, like, and you would talk about them, their personality, even a little bit about their personal life. Like you made it. It was real, and it really gave me an education around advocacy, right? That a lot of people don't get. A lot of students aren't getting that now, right? I work with a lot of MSW students who are excited to be in spaces like that, and they just don't get that realness that I saw in you. My big, of course, by far, us sort of crystallizing that DR training was just everything for me, right? Not just in Nevada, but B and I were in everywhere. We went to Jerome, Idaho. We were at CSTI
Kalamazoo.
Center,
Oh, yeah.
every year or every other year. We were in Michigan, and so when we got to a place as an organization where there was recognition that this coalition was building a movement, that to me, that was a very huge moment. Because when I first met the Southern Nevada office, it was just like two people in this little bitty, was it off Desert Inn? It was like this little bitty random spot,
It was in the back of a desk in the back of a real estate office, and then it was on the top of a moldy, like, gay bookstore.
I
Okay.
like that.
I'm trying to visualize that. Okay. So, and I, by that, as time progressed, I started building relationships in Southern Nevada through my work. And I would talk to folks, particularly BIPOC folks, Black folks, and I'm like, what's Plan? What is that? What are you talking about? What is Plan? And so pivotal moments for me was being able to be a part of that transition and that like expansion in Vegas, right? Where we had a presence and people started to recognize the organization and not just see it as a Reno organization, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was good for the organizing that was happening in Southern Nevada. The other thing that was, and I saved this for the last, there's two other things that were very important. My sister and I founded Trends, and we're not going to talk about the Z. It's just we were just being trendy, but come on. And so if it weren't for Plan, right, Trends wouldn't have been able to build the capacity that we were able to build in youth organizing work. We had limited resources. We had, limited reach. And so no matter what it was, Plan was always there to like support us and make sure, our young folks got to conferences or make sure they were at the table, being a part of these conversations, right there with Jan, like having conversations about what's happening in Carson City. So that was important for youth organizing in Southern Nevada. And then the last but not least this is how I met Ruby Duncan. My heart. And so, we on a call and Maya was like, we need to do something about Ruby's story down in Southern Nevada. I'm like, who is Ruby? Because we on a conference call, right? We didn't have Zoom. And so then they started explaining to me who Ruby is. And then I met Ruby Duncan, and then the rest was history, right? In terms of like continuing to build and just kind of find that synergy around voices that are often overlooked and not heard in Southern Nevada. And so those were good times. And I talk about Plan all the time, right? As a professor who teaches to people who aspire to do the things that we had the opportunity to do, I am always talking about Plan as an example of coalition work and base building. And so those were my highlights.
I love that. And thank you for bringing Ruby and Maya's name into this. Maya Miller really did, something great for the movement. She, helped support and invested in Plan, but also Emily's List, the Ford Foundation, Orchard House is in the Washoe Valley. And it's just amazing to go into that home and just see the pictures on the wall and buttons. Maya Miller challenged Harry for U.S. Senate in the 70s. And it's just so much rich history. And I think it's also still tied to what we were talking about earlier. It's like you knew where we stood with us. You all knew Maya. I did not, unfortunately. She passed away before I moved to Nevada, but she wasn't running just to run. She's not one of those people who had $30 and just decided to file. It's like running with an agenda and making sure people knew where you stood. And also, as a white woman with wealth, she invested in people and other people's leadership. And I really want that to be the continued legacy of Plan. So Maya invested in Ruby Duncan and Operation Life, and we want to keep investing in more and more people, even from Trends, Kenya. There's amazing people from Trends like Michael Flores, Beatrice Aguirre. Like they're doing amazing things, and they started with leadership development and year-round organizing, and regardless of what they do or where they work, they're going to have that frame of reference, and it's just the work and investment that we put into people like them that's making a difference.
Yeah, Maya was my neighbor and my confidant. And, every time I came home from the legislature, I would go to her house and we rebrief like what happened. And I'd give her all the stories. And then there were times in Plan where we'd lose a lot of young people's staff. They'd move on, right? Yeah. And of course, we had trained them and we had put our love into them and really wanted them to stay with us forever. And Maya said, no, that's good. It's good they're moving on. Don't feel bad. You are training them for the future. I said, I know, but we have to redo it again and again. And but she had so much to offer us. And when I met Ruby was early on, before Plan, long before Plan. And she was inspirational, especially because I did so much on welfare rights stuff. And then reading the book about her and taking her to the Secretary of State's office when she was a lector during the Obama. And Michael and I picked her up at the airport. We took her to the Capitol, and Ross Miller just loved her, the Secretary of State. So we had to go see him, and I took Ruby all over the place. And it was so incredibly inspiring to be with her and see how respected she was for her work. Because you're right, I wasn't here during that period when they were doing, the March on the Strip. Right. So, yeah, Maya and Ruby, they were two fabulous people.
Yes.
Sorry you don't see Ruby anymore, but she's still going, right?
I still get calls from her with advice about how to organize and who to organize. So I appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, she's trying to tell me how to organize here in Texas.
Listen to your elders.
Like Ruby, I'm not getting out there.
See, I think what this speaks to too about it being a different time then was people think, I don't know, maybe people assume that the progressive infrastructure has always been what it's like or whatever. But, back then there was you could count the number of organizers in the state on one hand. you know, and so part of Maya's reason for investing in Plan was to build that infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so when we got these, you know, the big money from the Ford Foundation, she was pretty and the advice was to spread that out a little bit. Don't just build up a big central staff. Use that to seed groups. And that's how, like, Trends, Latinos for Political Education, the Alliance for Workers' Rights, the first, you know, Gay and Lesbian Center up here, a number of other, you know, Great Basin Resource Watch, Nevada Conservation League. You know, we spent half of our big Ford grant, so that was about $2 million over a 10-year period, building those organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that subject, B, I mean, that's a lot of money, and creating more new organizers. I mean, was the Nevada State Democratic Party thrilled? Were they glad they're going to get help, or like, what was that like?
Oh God, yeah, it was really funny. So the head of the we said we were going to start a PAC. It's called the Nevada Progressive Coalition because we want to help elect progressives like, you know, like Lori Littman Brown and Emma Sepulveda. And I got a call once, and from the chair of the Washoe County Party, she said, "Mr. Fulkerson, we have a progressive coalition in Nevada. It's called the Nevada Democratic Party." You know, they were not happy.
No.
She got over it now.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel? And I think we all know Rebecca Lamb. We know the term the Reed machine. And I like that Rebecca says the Reed machine is the sum of its parts. The Reed machine wasn't just Harry Reid. It was the leadership development. It was a year-round organizing. It was labor progressives. How do you feel like Plan's trajectory has played a big role in the Reed machine and getting the Democratic Party used to understanding we need a progressive left?
Well, that wasn't on the list of questions, but I'll give this a
I
shot.
know. Sorry.
No, I remember Harry Reid during the immigrant rights debate when he introduced and was working on S-722, which is the only comprehensive immigration bill to pass bipartisan in the U.S. Senate because of Harry Reid. He did a briefing with, and Schumer was there, like the head of the, you know, the national heads of all these unions were there. And then little old Plan was there. And he like opened it up by saying, you know, Plan is the group that has helped to turn Nevada purple, you know, and it was a pretty it was a big deal. I think our, you know, we definitely contributed to that, you know,
Sure.
and I'm really proud of the role that we played. There were no state tables, you know, we seated like the 501c3 table and worked with the national outfit to help bring together the nonpartisan voter groups in a table, and then later on all the electoral groups in a table, and you know, and then they blossomed and went off to do even greater work after that. But you know, those places started somewhere, you know.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that too. And this is what our friend Leslie Turner likes to talk about, is just our willingness to kind of incubate groups within Plan and support them being independent, like Mass Liberation. Even the Nevada Conservation League started as an organizing position with Plan. Whenever I'm in the Reno office, I like to be nosy and look through all the file cabinets. And I found the stack of applications of people applying for that position. I think it was like 2002. I don't know if y'all remember. So it's like, yeah, we have done, like, we weren't here to build an empire. We were here to build a movement.
Yeah.
And I think just kind of our footsteps that are kind of everywhere and the trails that we leave, I think it's undeniable evidence that we've been successful at doing that.
Can I just like add a tidbit on that, since you mentioned the Reed machine? Like, yeah. it also wasn't by chance that I ended up working at the Democratic Party at the start of the 2008 caucuses. It wasn't just a random thing. It was, hey, you're with Plan, right? And you've been, progressives and Black people, can you please come help be a part of this and galvanize and do the outreach, right? And so, then State Senator Horsford was very intentional in his ask of me. And I don't know that would have happened without the work in the building and all of the efforts that I was a part of with Plan, right? Statewide.
Yeah, one of the things, Senator Reed, I didn't know this until we started working on it, but we worked on ex-felon voting rights, restoration of voting rights. And we were at a NAACP party, and his chief of staff said, Jan, you have to go talk to him about this. He'll be so excited that you guys are really getting something done about restoring voting rights. And I didn't even know that about him, that was a really high priority issue for him. And he was thrilled with our work. And we disagreed with him. And there were some groups in our coalition who were upset when we disagreed with him, particularly about water, grabbing the water from rural Nevada to go to Las Vegas. That was a big issue. And we said, no, we have to stand up for that. That is not right. And he forgave us. It wasn't the end all, but some people were so afraid of him that they were afraid to say no, to him. And I think that, that was us. We just didn't back down. The whole mining thing, going after mining was a huge deal. And it was, it went on and on. And they had 20, 30 lobbyists in the building. And I felt like I was running around, trying to watch them all just because they were doing such horrible stuff. And, but, we got known for that. We stood up to them,
Yeah, that's what I appreciate about Senator Reed. I'm sorry, unlike Catherine Cortez Masto, he did not hold a grudge. He knew where we stood on mining and he knew why. But he still knew that we were doing good work and we weren't doing it just to hurt him. We were doing it because of the relationships that we had with tribal members and rural Nevadans. And so I think that's what made him a really good leader is he was forward thinking. He invested in leadership development. I'm sure he was excited about the reenfranchisement because that was about democracy. It's about creating more voters and making the demographics of people eligible to vote actually reflective of the population. Because I think in the beginning, B was saying most of our elected officials in the building were white men. Most of the electorate, I had gone back and looked at electoral data, most of the electorate were white folks, but Nevada has always been a place where there's a lot of Latinos and of course indigenous people and Black folks, but they were just disenfranchised. And as we've been able to reach those people through many different groups and avenues, get them engaged in the process, we've seen the face of leadership in Nevada change. Stephen Horsford is now the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Catherine Cortez Masto is the first Latina to be elected in the United States Senate. And so it took a long time. It does not happen overnight, but it happens through sustained long-term organizing. And I'm glad we were able to accomplish that. I have a fun question and then a more serious question to close us out. My fun question, Plan is also known for, and I've heard Barbara Buckley say this too, we're known for our actions. We're known for our ability to throw down, even get arrested sometimes. I would love to hear from the three of you. Maybe we can start with Kenya. What was your favorite action that you were either a part of or that Plan did?
So I forget what it was. Was it the report card? I don't know. But I just remember we were in Carson City and we were going to deliver something to the governor.
Oh, yeah.
And on the way there, Ben's like, here, Kenny, you hand it to him. No, it should come from you. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, so that was my little moment of it was fun though. That was fun. And And I just remember, I felt like it was Gibbons.
It was Gibbons.
Because he was red as a beet. And
He'd never talked to a black woman
he was
before.
more scared to take the thing from me than I was to give it to him. And so then after that, I was like, I felt bad for him. I'm like, oh.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah. How about you, Jan? What was your favorite action?
Oh, my favorite. We had a rally out in front of the legislature, and well, we had a couple of really good ones, but this one was about mining, and we were Canadians. We pretended to be Canadians, and we had Canadian flags because the mining companies take their money from Nevada, take it back to other countries. Canada being one of the big ones. And I remember passing out, it was just so much fun, passing out the flags. We sang the national anthem for Canada. And, it was just raising these funny awareness of who are these people that are doing business in Nevada, And we were written up in the New York Times. I got in the New York Times. The woman said I was a sprite. She thought I was like a sprite with a
Sprite. That's so
flags, running around with flags.
I know, for anyone who hasn't met Jan is a big presence in our community, in my life. Jan is a very small person, so Sprite is a very good description. How about you, B? I feel like you have like a long scroll to choose from. So what would you think your favorite was?
Yeah, no, we picketed every governor from 1994 on through all the 24 years I was there. And we picketed every legislature, and we dared them to arrest us. And because we thought it was important to have ordinary people come in there and make their demands for basic humanity, for basic services, for and the idea that this state needs to work for all of us and not just those who are, rich and powerful enough to have lobbyists in the building. And I'm really proud of like a couple of those things. One of them was Tent City, where Sheila had a bill in to give $10 million to the homeless. So we organized cardboard boxes. We slept out there, including my dad, on behalf of his fellow Vietnam veterans. And we didn't get permission to do that. And we set up a big cardboard box city. The other one was Sandoval, where education, SHUN, goes to die. And that was in Sandoval's first thing because there was no money for education. Mm-hmm. So when Michael Flores and Sandoval had the big kind of set to there, and look where Michael is now, full circle. It's really good to see that. It's awesome.
Right.
And people have changed for the better. And the other one was that my best one, though, was the Laxalt action. All these lobbyists had given money to Adam Laxalt's campaigns. And Adam Laxalt was the attorney general then, and he'd signed on to a lawsuit to deport people like Astrid Silva and people that we knew and loved, who had been in Nevada longer than that carpetbagger had.
Yes.
We wondered why these lobbyists were doing that. So we played this thing called Lobbyist Bingo. And we had all the people, all the lobbyists who had given money to Adam Laxalt on a bingo card. We brought a couple busloads of community folks from Las Vegas and Reno. You can tell who was in the building, who belonged in the building and who didn't. And then they would go through and ask, oh, look, there's so-and-so. Hey, lobbyist so-and-so, why did you give money to Adam? And they were so upset that we would have the gall to question their authority over it. And then we blocked we took over Adam Laxalt's office. We blockaded the street. Several hundred people. Yeah. It was pretty fun.
It was. Luckily, that office is now occupied by our friend Aaron Ford, who's our Attorney General now. I wonder if y'all could remember. I feel like someone told me this story. Maybe it was Maya Miller, where you all were there to testify about possibly food stamps, and the legislature was rejecting it, so they flipped over the dinner the legislators had.
That was before our time. Oh. It was Maya and Ruby Duncan. That was the group. They basically threw the hamburgers on the floor. Oh. Maya was escorted out of the building and told never to come back. Oh, wow. And I mean, and basically all she said to them was, if you came to my house, I would offer you food. And there they were eating in front of all the poor women who they had flown up from Vegas to be part of the testifying for rights. Yeah, that was Maya loved that story. We used to laugh about it, and she went into the building. They never stopped her, but
even though the legislature, the leadership delivered her a letter, the Carson City sheriff went out to her house with the lights flashing to deliver her a letter on behalf of the legislative leadership to let her know she was no longer welcome in the building.
Wow.
She got served a restraining order.
You think
I love
Jan was
that.
small? You should have seen Maya.
That's the goal.
I
there
know.
were so
Life
many,
goals, huh, Laura?
Yes.
there were so many good ones. You know, when Senator Raji was invited to a rally we had for all the human services, we were getting all the human services people together to talk about their needs, right? And so the disabled people were up there, and the women and children, and yeah, I mean, we just brought everybody to the legislature. And he said to me, "You're not going to ambush me, are you, Jan?" And I said,
Aw.
"Absolutely not. You come and speak, say whatever you want." He gets out of the legislative building. He was of course, the majority leader at the time. And he said that the John Birchers were taking over his party. Well, needless to say, that's the only thing that made it in the press, that Raggio said that, and this was way before what's going on now. But he said they're trying to take over my party, because he supported money for services.
Yeah.
He was one, of the advocates, especially for disabled folks. And there were a lot of good stories. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah. I love that. And respect to Bill Raggio too. Obviously he was not on our side for everything, but I always hear a lot of good stories from him, and just respect. And not the same party. Even Governor Sandoval, it just feels like not the same party, and that's too bad.
Yeah.
One of the last questions I want to talk about is kind of how, I'm in my space now as a director, and really I walk down a path that you three and so many more have paved for me, and I want it, and my goal is to keep extending it. But as we've learned, and if people are familiar with Maurice Mitchell, who wrote the article Building Resilient Organizations, there is kind of fissures in the progressive left when it comes to organizing. And we've dealt with people challenging the need to have one-on-ones, or challenging the need to have coalition with people, and organizing across differences for a common goal, needing that purity to even break bread with somebody. I would love to hear from each of you, because you started Plan, you grew Plan, you maintained Plan. Why do we do those things? What is the power in those relationships and one-on-ones? And even, we may not agree with Harry Reid on mining, but we were able to work across differences. How do you see that as being important still? That's a big question.
It's something I spend all day thinking about still, because now I was executive director of this, that, and the other, but now I get to be lead national organizer for a new formation. I love it.
Yes.
And the idea behind organizing isn't just to go, it's to have some fun, but it's to build power. How do you build power?
Right.
Well, guess what? It's not just by talking to people who only think like me, and only being at a table with people who think like me. The possibilities for creativity, for tension, and the only way to build power is by bringing in people who don't necessarily think like me,
Right.
and then finding out what our common areas are, and building on those, and bringing each other along, so that we can see past our differences that those in power exploit, in order for us to be at each other's throats. And the one-on-one is essential to leading right here with our hearts. What is it that you care about? What kind, and how can we build a relationship together in solidarity, and move our communities forward?
Yeah, I remember it. I wanted to mention the domestic partnership registry, because it was a huge victory.
Yeah.
Huge.
Oh, huge.
Way before January.
Huge.
And it was It was fought by a lot of people you never would have believed were on our side. I mean, when we got the bill passed, it was vetoed by Governor Gibbons, came back, and we had to override the veto. It was incredible. I had people coming up to me and saying, "Who do you want me to talk to?" I'd say, "Get me a Republican." We needed one more Republican in the Senate, one more in the Assembly. And oh man, I mean, the Truckers Association guy was helping us. We were getting help from the most broad base of groups. And I went to see one of the assemblymen who I didn't agree with on most things. Turned out he was our vote. And he told me his whole life story, how he grew up. He was from Pahrump, and he was a character, but he believed in equal rights, and he believed in being fair, and he supported the domestic partnership registry. And I'll tell you, when we had to, so much went on that session because it went for a long time trying to override these vetoes, and because he vetoed a lot of bills too. And he was with us the whole time, and I kept looking at him, and he'd look at me, and he'd say, I'm with you. I kept thinking he was going to back out. And Barbara Buckley finally went over to him right before the vote to confirm he was a vote. And he did it.
Nice.
It was powerful.
I love it.
And we didn't agree with him on anything else. Nothing. He wanted to talk taxes. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. But anyways, I've always believed you have to work together, and sometimes you have to compromise. And it's not easy for people who want purity and they want it the way it should be.
Right.
And it was the hardest thing for me. It was telling people, you might not get that, but maybe we can get this, So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Kenya?
Yeah, that's such a rich question, and I appreciate you asking that. And I agree with what my friends are saying. I mean, I was wary for a second because I thought that technology was going to undermine good old fashioned relationship building. And what I'm learning in the work that I'm presently doing is, right, people want to feel humanized. Like, people want to feel like they're connected to this because they have a story to tell. They have lived experiences that matter. And the young folks say stand on business. That's the little phrase they use. And now that's a part of standing on business, like building these relationships with each other, right? That goes beyond social media, that goes beyond you being in your bubble on your single issue that's so important to you. How do we have these conversations together? Right? How do we humanize each other? And what are we bringing to the table that's about the process, right? That's about the experience. And I want to see, and I'm advocating for more progressive spaces and coalitions to really not lose sight of that, right? Not lose sight of the wellness that comes with this, right? Yeah. And on this side of COVID, and the whole George Floyd and everything that happened in 2020, like it only takes one straw to break the camel's back these days, right? In terms of what people are willing to do, or, ball their fists up and turn and go the other way. And so really getting back to, like, how do we center relationship building and how do we humanize the work with each other?
I love that. And also shout out to social workers like Kenya, and just like so many who have been a part of PLAN, are still part of PLAN. Our Northern Nevada team is actually at UNR right now. Shout out Michael Flores.
Hey.
At the School of Social Work tabling. So we still have those strong relationships. But I appreciate the time you all took to chat and answer these questions. I know you all are all busy in your own lives, but I hope you understand how much you mean to me, how much you mean to the state of Nevada and just the progressive movement here. And again, I'm really appreciative of all the gifts that you all have given the state.
Laura, we appreciate you too, and you stay strong, sister. Much
Thank
love
you.
to you and your team.
Yes,
Thank you
absolutely.
for carrying it
I
on.
love you, Laura. I'm so proud of you. And
Thank you.
I'm just a text away if you need me.
Okay.
Man, it's so good to see you.
It's great to see you too. Oh my gosh. We
Aw,
had so much fun.
We did. We did.
we love it. Well, I'm going to quickly do a call to action. I think they're going to go to the green room. So obviously, we need a call to action. Everything we do. We're in a housing crisis. I know Governor Lombardo seems to think we are not, but we are. So we have monthly housing meetings, but we also do consistent court watching. And what does that mean? So we go to eviction court and in North Las Vegas for Judge BTH. It is tenant landlord court. We watch what's going on and we collect data about what we see. I've gone to court watching, not as much as other folks on my team, but the one time I went, it was pretty shocking just how quickly people are evicted and just how dismissive judges are to the tenants who are bringing in their evidence and their information. And within minutes, their lives are changed. So you can go to mobilize.us and look for Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada. You can sign up for tenant watching April 8th here in Las Vegas Justice Court. There's also some links for North Las Vegas Justice Court. And what this all is building up to is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. We are hosting with the tenants we've been organizing with. They're hosting a candidate forum. They want to hear from legislative candidates, commission candidates, city council candidates about how they plan to address the housing crisis, but more importantly, how they plan to work with tenants to do it. I know we're tentatively scheduled for CSN Cheyenne. I don't know if I should have said that, but we did have one place, but they forgot that it was Cinco de Mayo, so they canceled on us. That's okay. But you will have that information, but go to our Mobilize, go to our social media, just RSVP to hold that on your calendar for May the 4th. It's also going to be a resource fair. And so you should come if you have questions from the Legal Aid Center, Nevada Legal Services, the ACLU. You have questions about your own eviction, getting it off your record. We'll have lunch. Of course, the tenants will be leading us, and you'll get to hear from the people who are asking for your vote. And so May the 4th, go to PLA Nevada on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You should be able to find the link, and of course on mobilize.us. So please show up for us, show up with us. We would love to have you because the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So if we are going to solve the housing crisis, it's not going to be done by destroying public lands or building more things. It's going to be done by creating a stronger tenant protection law for all Nevadans. And so May the 4th, I look forward to seeing you. You can wear Princess Leia buns if you want to. We'll welcome you anyway. So thank you all again. And I look forward to talking to you all for the next episode of What's the Tea? And happy 30th to Plan Dirty 30.
30